Osaka.
This week on the Squatchers Lounge podcast, David the Reverend Chef discussed the Hibagon, or Japanese Bigfoot. But first, as always, we'll go over the news, maybe get some bits from our friends, and probably say something offensive, let's be honest. Manually aborted panda fetus. There, it's out of the way. I feel better now. And now to pass it over to the man who gives zero fucks. The Reverend Jeff Kelly.
That's right. Stealing art from the internet like every other folk ever could. I'm the Reverend Jeff Kelly, one of the hosts of this mess, and this is the Squatchers Lounge podcast. And sitting in the other seat over there is our pseudo Dr. David Batdorf, Esquire, pseudoscientist, accredited, of course, by the SLP.
It's good to be accredited by somebody, for sure.
Yeah, better than to be accredited by yourself like Melba Ketchum. So, hey, at least you've got one step up on there. You're at least accredited by me. I say you're a scientist.
I scienced real good.
I science real good in school. Tonight we're going to be talking about the Hibagon. That's right, the mystery Bigfoot type creature from Japan. Is it created by the A-bomb? Was it there before the Japanese got here? Who knows? We'll talk about it here in just a little bit on the show. But as usual, we start this mess off with a little bit of news. Is it going to let me do the news tonight? It is. That's right.
Oh, thank goodness.
And our news, as usual, is sponsored by Angels Dust Seasoning. That's right. Facebook.com/Angels Dust Seasoning to get yours today. I just put some Angel's Nectar on my pork tonight. Oh, yeah, baby. We're talking a little bit of honey crusted stuff in there. Just all kind of goodness. And they got all kind of stuff there. So go check them out. Somebody sending me a message right in the middle of the show. Gotta love them that.
Yeah. Hey, abort.
That's right. Especially because we never exactly know what they're going to say. So go to Facebook.com/Angels Dust Seasoning and get a little bit of yours today. $7, a little bit of shipping, be to your door in a few days. Hey, what happens when you go searching for teams in a national forest? You find 3 bodies in a truck. Well, apparently that's what happened just this past week in the Angeles National Forest. 3 bodies and a truck were found in the forest amid the search for 3 teens missing from Fontana. Fontana police were searching for 19-year-old Daniel Gamboa, 18-year-old Casey Vance, and 17-year-old Samantha Orn. I can't pronounce that, who were reported missing by their families, but apparently without finding them, they found these 3 bodies and a truck. Basically, you never know what you're going to find when you go off-roading.
You're like, we're looking for 3 people, possibly dead bodies, possibly in a truck. Ooh, wrong bodies. Awkward.
Yeah, wrong truck. Yeah.
So you're like, well, but yeah, okay. So you're looking for those people, but who are the other people? Like, no mention, no.
Apparently, the 3 teens were believed to be in Gamboa's white 2008 Toyota Tundra pickup truck. The vehicle that crashed over the cliff appeared to be a white truck, according to the video captured at the scene from Air 7. The tailgate also featured a distinct logo, according to the Fontana police. A tailgate appearing to have had the same logo was spotted at the scene of the crash. So basically, they were exactly expecting, hey, that's got to be her truck. She's got a Toyota truck. She's the only one that has that logo on it. That's got to be her truck. And they get down there and go, oh, wrong bodies found.
Yikes.
Well, they're still looking for those teens. So sadly, there's another white truck off a different cliff somewhere in the Angeles National Forest. So be on the lookout for that.
That's kind of like, wow. And then all of a sudden, missing 411 seems a whole lot less complex. And you're like, did they literally murder triple homicide to fake their own deaths at 19, 18, and 17? Yeah,
it didn't burn the truck like it was supposed to, so they actually found the bodies. That's kind of creepy. Speaking of missing 411, why are there thousands of people disappearing from national parks? Thousands? Tens? I wouldn't say thousands. There's not even thousands of people missing across all of them.
Well, since they designated the area as national parks, possibly thousands.
Right, but in each year's time, you got tens, maybe. How many people go missing every single year from the national park? Because like we used to have Bonnaroo in Tennessee, and every single summer some dumbass would die. And I would tell people, hey, I'm going to a party with 10,000 people and they're randomly going to kill someone. Do you want to go? Maybe we should stop going into the national parks.
It's kind of exciting.
You know, it's
10,000 people, somebody's going to die anyway. It's just going to be like somebody drop dead and be like, wow, that was unexpected.
Weird. Yeah, but somebody that usually dies from taking too many drugs and dancing in the sun to music because they're stupid. Anyhow, according to the Ghost Diaries, thousands of unsolved missing persons cases are occurring in national parks and forests in the U.S. and around the world, and only one researcher has been feverishly looking for it. That's right, another missing 411 book from Mr. Paulus. Now, this is the guy who called a family man an outright liar because it didn't fit his vessel for the Melba Ketchum study. And then when he was proven to be lying about it, or got caught in the fact that he called somebody else a liar about it, just dismissed the entire community as not worth talking to. And since then, he has exited from the Bigfoot world because no one will listen to Melba. So take it for what it's worth. There's another 411 book coming out. He must be broken but trying to make more money. And I'm done promoting his crap. We don't all believe that.
We all know how my one back and forth with David Pilates went, and it was pretty much just like, I'm not even going to respond to that. Anyway.
Yeah. I mean, the guy it's his theory or it's no theory, and that's the way it goes. Thousands, tens, maybe. Anyhow, hey, this is interesting. Bipedal crocodile ancestor discovered in North Carolina. Now, for years upon years, there's been story of the lizard man stands on two legs and runs after people and kills them and swallows them whole. Well, if that's the case, if there's a bipedal crocodile ancestor discovered in North Carolina, chances are him lived in South Carolina too, because I don't think they knew there was a border.
Meet the Butcher of Carolina.
The Butcher of Carolina. That's right. In Triassic North Carolina, a 9-foot-tall bipedal crocodile relative ruled the land with a jaw full of knife-like teeth. Meet the Butcher of Carolina. Crocodiles are already scary, and they like to waddle side to side, running towards their prey with a menacing set of teeth, set a powerful pair of jaws. Now imagine a similar 9-foot-tall animal running towards you, and now only lunging at you on a single pair of legs. This is the Butcher of Carolina, or the Carnifex. I'm not the Latin guy. That's your pick. What the hell's that word? Carolinensis. That's what it is.
The Carolinensis is
Carolinens. So it's the Carnifex carolinensis. Hey, I said that one right. This crocodile relative lived in the Triassic period some 231 million years ago. Ooh, swing and a miss, strike one.
231 million years ago. Yeah. So, but here,
we were still on the supercontinent of Pangaea at the time, and it's now North Carolina. It wasn't then, but it is now. North Carolina very well could have been next to Africa at that point. Pangaea was a very, very small place.
North Carolina was probably underwater. Let's just be fair. So the interesting thing about some of these articles like this, and it's a relative of the crocodile. However, a crocodile, much like lizards, has very specific body mechanics that don't allow for bipedalism very well. Sauropods and theropods and all these other sorts of animals like the T-Rex and whatnot that are not related. T-Rex didn't become a chicken, right? They're not related to birds, but they.
Well, I'm pretty sure I got 4 T-Rexes back there in my brooder box.
They have a common ancestor that goes back way, farther away.
Have you seen a cockatiel without feathers? I have seen them recently. I got 4 damn T-Rexes.
Little tiny T-Rex. But anyway, like the basic idea that this could actually be a bipedal crocodile ancestor is pretty far-fetched for a lot of reasons, and I'd like to see the science on that.
Damn pseudoscientist, ruin everything.
I'm sorry, I'll ruin it for everyone. The crocodiles like to go to the outsides.
Possible new whale species discovered in the Pacific Ocean. Discovered dead, but discovered. That's how things usually are discovered. They wash up dead. Architeuthis, dead. The giant squid, dead. The Humboldt squid, dead. That's how we find most of these things out. We find a dead one. So that's kind of why we're looking for a dead Bigfoot. So we can say, hey, look, possible new hominid species. Bigfoot found dead.
But to do proper analysis, to be fair, you need to be able to poke around in it with a stick. So the only way to do that is with a dead body like this. And what do you think? Those claw marks? Could that be Sasquatch?
Sasquatch. Well, you know, it is the Japanese, so if you give them enough time, they'll figure out a way to eat this thing, and they'll just eat them out of extinction anyhow. So
now the interesting thing is they're calling this a beaked whale, which there is a subset of beaked whale that are different than porpoises. You know, and so this is a very interesting idea and kind of a throwback species to the baleen whales. There's not a ton of beaked whales left aside from I mean, the most popular is the sperm whale that actually have the, you know, your toothy carnivorous aspects to them. So a really cool find, a new species, question mark. It's hard to tell.
Very large mammal.
Smelling like a rose that somebody gave me when I'm dead and bloated. So it's hard to recognize for sure. So cool. Possibly. We'll wait and see.
Yeah, we'll see how the DNA comes back. Speaking of bullshit, 7 foot tall hellhound skeleton unearthed near ancient monastery in the UK, known according to ancient texts as Black Shuck. The name believed to originate from an old English word which means black demon. The 7 foot tall beast appeared as a bringer of death in many ancient tales over 500 years ago. During
harbinger of death,
the Black Shuck was feared by the inhabitants of the modern-day UK due to the number of brutal deaths committed by the giant hellhound with a reddish, burning eyes. Now, over 500 years later, legends talk about the hellhounds. Archaeologists seem to have discovered the remains of the Black Shuck in the ruins of the Leiston Abbey in Suffolk. In the nameless grave, 30 inches deep among several pieces of pottery surrounding the body. Just bullshit. 7 foot tall dog, maybe. You know, these remains, there's no real scale here, so you can't really tell how big this thing, but it comes from ancient-code.com. That should give you your first hint. And according to Reverend Abraham Fleming's book, that should give you your second hint right there. I just thought it was neat because it was the hellhounds of death.
The hellhound, but at the same time, there's like everything else. There's an actual analog that could potentially be there. There's a there's a breed of dog that was larger than the Irish Wolfhound that was bred for a long time in the U.S. and in the U.K. that was gigantic, like. And basically nearly the size of a horse. And they bred them. They had terrible inbreeding problems, terrible like genetics, but they were huge and they were dangerous and they were vicious. And that's a pretty good precursor to a story about hellhounds in the UK and the 7 foot carcass. Even if it was true, that's probably more like what it was. There's an actual analog for that, and there's actual dogs that were actually killing people because they could.
So neat story there. You can check that one out, ancient-code.com. You know, here's a good question. Should animals have human rights? I mean, human rights, I think they should have life rights. Let's just call them life rights instead of human rights, because all things have life rights to a degree. But sanctioned things that are, you know, aware of their own self and, you know, probably think much like we do, probably don't deserve to be kept in zoos.
So I've given this a lot of thought, you know, and not, you know, literal masturbation, because that would be weird. But so the difference between giving rights to a being that understands its future self, like a gorilla or possibly a whale, possibly even some of the corvid species, which, quite frankly, we don't do the things that we do to primates and to whales and to, but then there's other animals that can't project a future self, like a cow or your dog per se. It can't think about itself in the future and how it would like.
A cow thinks about how much grass I can stuff in my mouth today,
and it goes along with the herd. It's very much a reactionary animal.
Right. It's gonna think about that same thing tomorrow. It's gonna think about that the same thing on the third day. It's how much grass can I stick in my face today?
So a difference between like a dog is a learning animal, and they can learn communication, they can learn commands, and they can remember things, but what they can't do is think about what they want to be in the future, or predict how they're going to set themselves up in the future. They're just doing the now, right? And so there's the subset of animals, and people are like, well, should they have human rights? Well, no, because human rights come with human responsibilities.
Right.
Responsibilities.
Gorilla's not paying taxes, so he doesn't have a right to welfare.
Well, but an inalienable human right is not about paying taxes. An inalienable human right is about respecting the rights of others. And unless you can explain to the
gorilla,
to the gorilla or the whale,
no, Mr. Gorilla, you can't touch Johnny. Johnny has his space.
However,
Mr. Gorilla, stop ripping his face off. He has his space.
Yeah, that is his face. It's like, but that fucker looked at me wrong. Well, I've met a lot of guys in the bar like that, but also like, those guys have their rights taken away because they have human rights, and human rights can be taken away, and they can be incarcerated for ripping your face off, right? So the question is, should a gorilla who likes to rip people's faces off be put down or just imprisoned? That's not really a question. No, don't even go down that road. So the whole idea is, should we imprison, or should we kill family members of altruistic, future thinking animals? And there should be, like, it's our obligation as thinking, projecting, altruistic, complex, and the most amazing species on the face of the planet. It's our responsibility to think about those, and we should not necessarily give them human rights, but there should be rights based on their assumptions. A dog doesn't have an assumption. I'm not saying you should beat your dog, because in the now that's wrong, but you shouldn't own a chimpanzee, or you shouldn't own a whale, or you shouldn't own a crow.
Weirdo wackos in the Congo, listen up for just a moment. You definitely don't fucking eat them. You don't eat your cousins. I mean, that's literally what you're doing when you eat a chimpanzee or a gorilla or a bon. You're eating your cousin.
Honestly, though, but that's different. Because they eat each other sometimes. The eating for purpose is...
Yeah, but they're the ones that don't have the ability to see future.
Well, but the chimpanzees absolutely can, and they're eating each other not just for nutrition, but to prove a point.
Yeah, but as the responsible ones is my point. We're not to eat our cousins. We should know better.
We should know better, and also, when there's bigger pictures here, but no human, quote unquote, human rights. If you actually look at what the United Nations gives human rights to us, it's very specific, and it has very much to do with politics and other things like that. And this gorilla does not know politics. It knows piñatas are awesome.
That's right.
But it does not know politics. It does know how to chill the fuck out, however.
Yes, apparently with the baby, it does know how to sit and chill.
But so free the gorillas, maybe. It's more like not necessarily free the gorillas, because that gorilla does not need to be freed. That gorilla is probably doomed to a life as it was. Maybe not
But we should definitely not be breeding them in captivity unless they're endangered.
And even then, that's a slippery slope because genetics is tough. But breeding programs within zoos is for our amusement and not reasonable.
Not for the aid of
and you
animal.
would if somebody were to actually go and do the unsavvy thing and clone a Neanderthal. And then clone another Neanderthal, keep them in captivity, and just breed them so that we had a bunch of Neanderthal to look at, we would have ethical problems. So why then do we do that with chimpanzees and gorillas? That is the question, my friends.
That's right.
Not human rights,
but
not
right.
Our outrage. There should be a set of ape rights, and there should be a set of corvid rights, and there should be if a crow can understand when it's imprisoned, which I'm not sure that it can solve complex problems and it can work out complex tasks. It's got a very complex brain for being so small, but it can't understand its current situation. I take it back because they can. Sorry. and feel distressed because of that versus just enjoying the fact that people throw food at them all day. That's the difference.
All right, moving right along.
Sorry.
Bethel Valley News.
Tribe.
Big bear, but not a grizzly. It sure as hell looks like a grizzly, at least from my dead eyes from here. But a trail camera set by Mike Newman of Mount Vernon in the Big Valley Wildlife Area last week caught photos of an impressive bear that made Newman wonder if it might be a grizzly bear.
It does have a lot of the color aspects and
the shortness of the hair. There's a lot of things that point at grizzly bear.
However, it's probably just a post-rain picture of a nice blonde black bear, and you can tell that from a few characteristics, and most of which is the muzzle, because it looks even like it has kind of that grizzly hump. The grizzly hump is more pronounced. But this is really just one of those, really know how to, especially because we're trying to decide whether or not the grizzly bear is back in this area. Mount Vernon is about 30 miles south of where I'm living, and the Maythow Valley is, some place that I'd like to go more often. It's great, and probably it's pretty squatchy, not going to lie. But on the east side of the Cascades, they're trying to decide whether or not the grizzly is there. And it's very important to understand the difference between a black bear and a grizzly bear. And this is a really good, androgynous picture of the black bear. And no, black bear and grizzly bear cannot create a hybrid. So that's not what this is.
Exactly. But it does have some interesting characteristics to it.
And it's also a gigantic bear, which it's a big ass black bear. I mean, that's like a 500
and it doesn't have the star
pounder
that I would normally aim for to shoot it in the heart. So I don't know where I'm killing this one. So maybe
right
it's
behind that shoulder blade, right there.
Right there in the pumpkin. I'd have to hit it. Let's see here. New evidence puts man in North America 50,000 years ago. Radiocarbon test of carbonized plant remains where artifacts were unearthed last May along the Savannah River in Allendale County by University of South Carolina archaeologist Dr. Albert Goodyear. What do you call a good year? 365 condoms. Indicate that the sediments containing these artifacts are at least 50,000 years old, meaning that the humans inhabited North America long before the last ice age. Now, they could have inhabited here and then had the ass out of here during the ice age and come back at the end of the ice age.
Let's just back up 1 second.
Back that ass
not
up.
In this ice age. So ice ages versus periods of glaciation or glacial maximums are all different ideas. And yes, we've decided that there are native peoples in South America 12,000 years ago. And no, they didn't float across on pieces of grass like a lemur or something. They got here probably way earlier than we thought that they did. And we've seen bigger migrations. And this is a questionable dating of how early that could have happened. But 50,000 years ago, if you were on the ice shelf versus like the inland route of Beringia, you probably could have gotten into the continental United States and South Carolina. But the glacial period that we're talking about, we're like, oh, they came over 10,000 years ago. Okay, well, 10,000 years ago is like a really good like glacial maximum in which that was possible. But we're still receding out of that 10,000 years later. You could still probably like drive a boat from, or I could still see Russia from my house if you're living in Alaska.
Russia from here.
Yeah. So we're still in that period of time, 10,000 years, 20,000 years later. But the time of the glacial maximum, 2,000 years prior to that, we're finding remains in Mexico. And we know that there are artifacts in Peru. So, yes, people probably came over way earlier. And there was probably a huge period of time where we were just as close as we are now. And you could probably, if you can see it, you would float a boat to it.
Right.
And so very, very, very simple, like kind of simple ideas. And it's cool to see that there's potentially good evidence of that. However, like I say, if they're dating plant material, there's a lot of that's kind of like the worst kind of evidence.
But if all they're using is flint tools, it's kind of hard to date the tools.
It is really hard to date the tools because the tools are millions of years older.
Exactly.
And so they're dating plant material, which, carbon begets carbon, and the plant material that is the soil gets into that. So it's hard to really get a good time frame unless you have bones of the people themselves. But at the same time, it's cool. It's possible. Let's keep looking at this. But the cool thing is if people were there, then why not the Sam of Squanch?
Exactly my point is why I brought this up, is if people have been in and out of here all of this time, Bigfoot was probably here before all of us. We'll talk about that in our Japan talk tonight as well. Hey, here's something from BigfootBlogger.com. Bigfoot sighted regularly in Colorado. Residents say, we see them all the time. Well, where's the video or picture evidence of it? The Bigfoot conundrum. Sasquatch sightings have been reported all across the nation. Here in Colorado, some of those sightings were documented on the Pikes Peak region, which is out there by our guy, Rod Dupree.
The place to be.
Started asking around and quickly discovered he wasn't the first to spot them. People in town said, oh, yeah, that's a couple of young Bigfoot in the area. We see them all the time. So apparently, up there in Pikes Peak is where the Sam Squanches are hiding out.
It's no big deal. Colorado is a legal state too, isn't it? Yeah.
Okay. Yes, it is.
Yeah.
They grow them as big as trees out there. So keep your eyeballs peeled out there near Pikes Peak. A strange creature sighted near Sepulga River in Y'all Got Fucked Up Counties, Alabama.
I just keep thinking Sepultura. That's
I can't pronounce that word. I don't know. Witnesses reported to the Evergreen Current earlier this week that they saw a strange identified creature near the Sepulga River. Sepulga. I can't say that. Sepulga. I don't know. On Sunday afternoon, according to the witnesses who spoke, the condition of anonymity, because they don't want no one to know who he is. They were traveling west on Highway 84 on Saturday when they saw the strange creature between the Herbert and the Cohasset. I said that right. Communities in, I still can't say that word, County, Alabama. I think they put that word in there a million times just so people who had to say it just couldn't give up on the article. I don't know. As we approached the river, we saw a moving figure run straight across the bridge in front of us. For a split second, I thought it was a person running across the bridge. The eyewitness said he quickly changed his mind when he was the what? God, this is so horribly written. I can't even read it any freaking more. Anyhow, yeah.
Like the only thing that's really confusing me is what's the plural of anonymous?
Anonymous
apostrophe, like the anonymouses. I don't know.
I think the URL of this one, Leapiacock. It's actually the Lee Peacock, but I can't read anything in this article. It's on black background. Don't ever do that. It's horrible. All right, so that's going to kill us out of here for the news. No camping tips for stupids this week, and we're waiting for a quasi theory hopefully next week because music makes me taste funny. I'm not really sure how that all works out. But our main topic tonight we wanted to get to talk about is shout outs in the lounge, because that's what everybody seems to like. It's the time we talk about who you crazy people are out there hanging out in our live podcast chat room. If you haven't made a comment and you'd like to get a shout out, you better put one in there now. I see that Mr. Dave Stump made it in to see us this week, and Mr. Sam Rivera as well. Dean Cooper, our quasi-theorist. That's right. He's supposed to be making up a new quasi for next week. Mr. Dave Jackson, Mr. Rod Dupree in the place to be. Hey, bartender, get me a James Dalrymple. Got it right again. It's a starshine waiting in the sky. I've recently been watching The Martian. It's a great movie. Let's see who else is out there. Barry Bishop is in the house. How you doing there, Barry Bishop? I don't know that I've actually said that name before, so it might be a new one. Glad to join us here live on a Tuesday night. I know it's a little weird. We usually do this Wednesday nights. Let's see who else is floating around out there. You guys talk a lot, so I have to keep just tisk-tacking. And Anna Baz was out there as well. How you doing there, lady? Glad you could join us as well. Let's see here. There's a bunch of other people that were talking and talking. Hey, there's a name I haven't said yet. Oh God, we're gonna slaughter this one. Mokus Kakska. Yeah, that's the best I can do with that one. Mokuskakska. Mokus Kakska. And you can join us. Hey, close enough. I guess I do need to. Mokus Kakska. Yeah. Hey, I'm gonna get my tissue real quick. I had to get that one off me. Let's see who else is floating around out here. Wow, you guys are loving the chat room, and that is exactly what it's for. Did I say Dave Jackson was in the chat room? Be free. Well, I was glad you could be joining us. It's not free, but you can pay too. Don't get them girls to buy all the drinks. That's just kind of mean. Let's see here. Who else is floating around? Jen made it in the house tonight. How you doing there, Jen? God, everybody's got such a goofed up name. What happened to names like Chad, Bob, Phil, Dalrymple? Excuse me. Got me a little bit on me in there. And that looks like about who's out there tonight, because everybody else has been just chatting. So let's look down the bottom of the list and make sure I didn't skip over anybody who may have just left a comment, and we'll get into our main topic tonight, the Hibagon. Don Wright's in the house tonight. Look at that. He finally got his name in there. Raul Moreno, good evening to you as well. Kevin Montesino. That's what I said. Look at that. I managed to get everybody in before the end of shoutouts. Great. Ta-da! Glad everybody could join us. So let's take a look at exactly what the heck we're talking about here tonight. We are talking about, let's see here, the Hibagon, Japan's Bigfoot. It's very strange because, my question of did the atom bomb make hairy monkey people in Japan? Apparently not, because the story goes back way long before that. Alternatively, the Hinagon or the Mujimi and Kappa, also the name of the Japanese mythical creature, apart from having the same big feet as their North American counterparts, the Hibagon footprints are said to be much as 10 inches long, 6 inches wide. Descriptions of the Hibagon are 5 feet to 6 feet tall, foul-smelling, bristle-covered face, snub nose, and glaring eyes, making him more gorilla-like. than the Bigfoot and the Sasquatch, which were usually said to be 8 to 10 feet tall, upright walking, and man-like. Now, as usual, the good doctor is going to show us, kind of give us an idea about where we're talking about here on the googly earth. There's a specific section in Japan where they like to see them, and that's where he's going to take us.
Yes. So first, as always, I like to do the outer view, and where, of course, are we looking? And it's Japan. And
Japan.
As we were talking before about, our glacial periods and the fact that Alaska and Russia are really not all that far apart. And during their glacial maximums, we're pretty much together. And this was all completely free. And this area from, up here to down here was probably from Washington, like from Seattle to LA. And if you've ever driven that, don't. It's 20 hours at 80 miles an hour. So don't do it. But over here, we have this nice continental shelf that's very similar. And as we're talking about, as the Himalayas drain right through here, and we have Vietnam and Laos and China and all these other areas where we're seeing this really great examples. And this other rain shadow under Bhutan and, sorry, I'm the Vietnam, Laos, blah, 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 down here. This is something totally different. That's Korea. But we've been there too. And then we have this Mount Hiba area, which is in a fairly unpopulated portion of Japan. There are crossing roads, but you get in here and there's not a whole lot of anything, to be honest. A lot of clear cutting, but that's not always a bad thing for the wildlife because it allows light in and it really does grow a lot of things. But Mount Hiba is an important thing. This is probably let's see if I can click on here and get the data. Where's the data? Meters. Killing me. 1,300 meters.
1,300 meters. That's 13 times 3. 26, 39, 3,900 feet.
Or more than that. So
3,926 feet to be exact. But
yeah. So but the idea, Japan only has a few very large peaks because it is an island. And so this is your high area and all of the water flows out of it. And so curious. Like, okay, so there's some pretty, like Osaka and Hiroshima, those are pretty big cities. And right up in this Hiba region, there's not a whole lot of anything. And I don't see any BFRO activity over here, but that's probably correct. But this is going to be montane. Every time I watch documentaries that have to do with like primates and like the snow monkeys of Japan and interesting things like that, the macaques that are up there chilling out in the thermal pools and whatnot. It looks very familiar. It's a coniferous forest with ferns on the ground, and like this really could be home. It's interesting. But it's off the coast of Korea and been separated for long enough to where it probably more closely resembles the Siberian region than it does Korea and the Chinese seaboard. So cool area, but what are the stories? I mean,
well, now the theories to the account for the cryptid range from a gorilla, a wild man, or a deserter from the Japanese chefs, not really too sure about that one, to an individual ravaged by atomic radiation from the nuclear attack on Hiroshima. Now, a sighting from
Fukuyama.
They don't have any reports from up there. A sighting from 1972 reports that the creature has a chocolate brown face and is covered with brown hair and is said to have deep glaring eyes. That seems to be the repeat, the deep glaring eyes. In 2 reports by a Mr. Sazawa and a Mrs. Harada, the creature, I know I'm murdering those names, took no hostile action and fled from 4 armed residents intending on hunting it. Well, surprise, surprise, surprise. It ran away from 4 jackasses with guns. Japanese Boy Scouts claimed to have found footprints 25 centimeters long and 15 centimeters wide. As with most hominid cryptids, the hibagon is said to have a most unpleasant stench like a dead human body.
Or unshowered human body. I've been there, done that.
The unshowered, that's hippie. That's California hippie. Now, Japan and America are drastically different countries, and in many ways, but there is one thing they both have is myths about the ape-like creatures that hide in the woods and terrorize campers. Hibagon, Japan's version of Bigfoot, was first reported by a farmer near Mount Hiba, according to Dom Joly in his book. The ape measured about 2 meters, 70 centimeters, and had dark reddish-brown hair, a big head like a cone, and was walking on 2 feet. Even though it's much shorter than the American Bigfoot, the hibagon is remarkably close to supposed Sasquatch sightings in the American Northwest. Over the next month, 10 more sightings of the mysterious creature were reported to the authorities. Police were even called in to escort school children to and from class because the reports caused such a stir in the community. The local government, who were being inundated, I'm not sure which, with reports, were forced to make special office called Anthropoid Section, specifically to handle the press coverage of the hibagon. In 1974, right when the hibagon excitement was fully dying down, a local named Mr. Midiani snapped by the only known picture of the ape-like animal. Like all photos of the mythological creatures, it's horribly blurry and grainy, but it sparked another round of people coming forward with their hibagon stories. Oh my God, you have to see this. I'm going to share this. Usually I don't share the websites because, well, that's their material, but even the hibagon has a blur squatch.
Oh man, that is epically blurry.
Bum, bum, bum. The hibagon excitement was over by 1975 when the Anthropoid Section closed its door. However, countless products from noodles to bath products popped up, barring the creature's name. No one is certain what could have caused the creature to suddenly appear in the 1970s. Some reports claim that the creature could have been a human who was disfigured from the radiation left behind at Hiroshima, given the city's close proximity to Mount Hiba. To this day, there have been no verified reports of the hibagon or its American brother, Bigfoot.
Bigfoot. To this day. Interesting, because there's lots of sightings
of the Bigfoot.
It depends on when they wrote that. To this day, from whenever that was.
1982 or something. I'm not sure. It's on the
internet. There's lots of sightings. So anyway.
It's an interesting idea. That's my whole thing is, if there is a Bigfoot type creature there, it was probably there before people got there. People have a way of moving in and thinking that we were the first ones there when, we're still cataloging stuff in the Amazon jungle and there have been people living there for, as long as people have been living.
The problem that everybody has, of course, with a place like Japan is that they've always been a highly developed nation on the forefront of industry and technology and blah, 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 blah. But that's not what we're talking about. Industry and technology happens where industry and technology happens. Technology has only become so widespread that we're starting to get all these blur squashes and stuff like that. But the 1982 and prior, what were you? The Polaroid, were you taking home videos on VHS or?
You remember the 110 cameras? Click.
Yeah.
Click.
Yeah. Not everybody had a cell phone in 1982, and if you think back to the 70s, which were forever ago, right? And like, or the 60s. And
4 decades ago, man.
Yeah,
That's
and when Japan was an up and coming nation, after we bombed the shit out of them, and whatnot. But is there a possibility? Yes, there is. That there's some stuff we don't know about on the island because it's not as they've done a better job than we have in the Americas of keeping their population in dense clusters and going up instead of out. However, they have logged worse than we have by
Fukushima. Holy crap!
Yeah, by the amount of landmass that they actually have, yes, it's probably it not as likely as China, big landmass, or Vietnam, underdeveloped landmass, but those things were all connected for 70 plus, 80 plus, 100,000 years, except for the last however many thousand years since that drainage path filled in, which we were talking about with that other article. Like, really, so people didn't just come over 10,000 years ago. They came over for a long time to the Americas. So why wouldn't they have been traveling back and forth when that wasn't such a wide gap, and cultural gap and racism, between Japan, Korea, and China? Same sort of thing. Like, and really, Japan boxed themselves out. They kind of kept themselves in, and then hit an industrial revolution later. And really interesting to think of, like, could there be relic populations? And if we're looking at like that 60-year lifespan, you really would only take a few generations. Again, that's what we're talking about right now.
Yes, exactly. Like, or have three births that could outlast what we're talking about in 100-year lifespan.
You're hitting genetic problems now-ish, like most of the other megafaunal creatures, pandas and in China, tigers and blah 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 blah. The macaques seem to be doing just fine on Japan, but they have lots of monkeys, macaques, primates. They know what that is. Why would they say that this is something else?
Right.
No. What a macaque is. That is the interesting question. And they don't have a lot of other large species on the island.
So unless it was a really hairy person or a leftover from Hiroshima, chances are there's still some kind of weird Bigfoot thing living on the island of Japan.
Mm-hmm. And all I know about, my Japanese friends is they can't grow an epic beard. So
sorry. The first touch is free. Mustache rides are expensive.
Try as you might.
Try as you might.
But just let it go.
Exactly. Well, that's going to wrap it up for our discussion on the Hibakon. Oh, thank you very much. Japan is not such a weird place. We talked about the Philippine Islands last time because they probably weren't always underwater like that. So they moved to things. Islands can contain things long before humans got there that could still be left over with just a few generations of breeding. Now you've got a relic population that's in trouble, and it's going to start pressuring itself and being seen more often. So I like the idea of it. I give it 2 thumbs up for a Bigfoot in Japan.
It's a cool idea, and they do have large areas of land that are just sort of set aside for, if nothing else, logging, agriculture, but the large tracts of land that are not developed on purpose. So a cool idea to think about. And I don't know anything about the edible berries and fruits on the island of Japan, but
apparently the macaques like them.
They can keep other primates alive. So there we go.
Exactly. Well, thank you guys, everybody, for watching tonight, the Squatchers Lounge podcast. Join us Monday nights for a Bigfoot Entertainment Weekly. And my brand new podcast will be starting on Sunday on another channel. It's called What The Flock, and it's going to be all about hand-raising baby parrots in the home, from small parrots to large parrots, things you need to know, things you can't find online, just cool stuff. So What the Flock will be starting on Sunday. You'll be able to find it on Facebook at What the Flock Podcast. Why not?
What the Flock Podcast with your host, Jeffrey Kelly, the Mother Flocker.
That's right, the Mother Flocker, the Reverend. Thanks, everybody, for watching, and may the Squatch be with you.
Squawk!
Oh, what the Flock? It's gonna have this. This is no joke. Some of the topics. What the flock do I do now? What the flock are they doing? What the flock happened here? What the
Why the flock would they have eaten that?
Yeah. What the flock are they eating? What the flock are they gonna do now? Next week we'll pick another Bigfoot from around America and get into the ins and outs and why it could or couldn't exist. God, please, everybody, pray for Germany and France and all this weird shit going on out there. See you next week.